In this video, I'll go over what the 3-question veganism trap is and how to use it. If you are a vegan, you can think of this as something like a suggestion for a persuasion tactic and kind of a how-to guide. If you're not a vegan, then this is an invitation to think of your answers to these questions. So before I go into what it actually is, something of a disclaimer here. This only works on psychologically, morally, medically normal people. And even still, people have a resistance to changing their minds and thinking of their behavior as unethical. So they often try to argue, sometimes even dishonestly, which means this often turns out to not just be a simple 3-question tactic. But in principle, with an honest person, it can be. This is a tactic that I've seen Earthling Ed use a lot, and even though people often fight with him about it, it still proves to be effective a lot of the time. Just like a real trap, for example, one of those pits in the ground that you cover up with leaves and sticks to make it look like the rest of the ground. In order for it to work, people have to walk into it. You stand there on the other side of the trap, gesturing, "Hey, follow me, come on over here." But often people will be wary of traps and hesitant to step forward, especially if they already know that on this topic, they're in opposition to you. Continuing the analogy, the trap stretches across the entire walkway, so the only way forward is to fall into the trap. But sometimes people will just refuse to walk forward knowing that there's a trap waiting for them. They'll refuse to take their own thought process, the path, to its logical conclusion. Extending this analogy even further, this trap isn't even one that whoever's asking these questions even set up. It's just sitting there in the road naturally if people take the time to walk down it. But the thing is, most people will just either never walk down this path, or they'll fall into this trap on their own and then go back the way that they came after discovering an unpleasant contradiction in their own ethics. And possibly they may tell themselves that they never fell at all. They may even say to themselves, "Oh, that path is a dead end," or "it doesn't even exist." So if you're asking people these questions, the role that you're trying to play is the person who leads them down the path and then helps them out of the trap on the other side. Don't make them feel bad for falling into it, because it's an unavoidable part of the path, and it will only make them want to go back rather than keep going. You're using the Socratic method, asking questions that will hopefully prompt critical thinking and get the person to think of the logical conclusions on their own. And I don't really mean the word trap to be sneaky. It's not about deceiving anyone. The trap isn't really something that I or whoever's asking has set up for them, but rather something that they've set up for themselves in their own logic. And now you're just questioning them, allowing them to discover it. So, the 3-question veganism trap. This is how it goes. The first question, do you think you need to eat animals to survive? The second question, do you think it's ethical to kill something unnecessarily? The third question, do you eat animals? The answers that you should get, given a best case scenario with a normal person, are no, no, and yes. At which point, the person should be able to understand on their own, or perhaps with some help from me or from whoever's doing the questioning, that their actions are in contradiction with their own beliefs. They think it's unethical to kill something unnecessarily, and yet they happily pay for that to happen on a daily basis for the sake of their own taste pleasure. Finding this contradiction or cognitive dissonance in yourself requires, at least according to dissonance theory, that you either change your actions to be in line with your beliefs, or you change your beliefs to be in line with your actions, so as to get rid of the cognitive dissonance. The goal that the questioner is aiming for is to get the person to change their actions. It would be counterproductive for them to change their beliefs instead. But once you get to this endpoint, people will usually be very reluctant to changing their actions. Their first instinct is often to try to rationalize away the inconsistency. They'll try to find a way to make it make sense without actually having to change. As the person asking these questions, you'll have to be patient and logical with them as they go through the motions of arguing against changing their own actions. In the worst case scenario, the person would rather change their beliefs than change their actions, and now they'll say that actually it's totally okay to just kill things unnecessarily, or something of that nature. Most people's actions won't be permanently and completely altered on the spot, or even altered at all. When we feel that mental discomfort of cognitive dissonance, we typically wish to avoid it at all costs, and the easiest way to accomplish that is just to stop thinking about it. Just forget there's a problem and keep doing what you do. So you'll have this discussion with someone, and maybe it'll seem promising. They might even say that they're gonna go vegan, and they might even try. But then the next day or the next week or whatever, it turns out that they haven't actually changed in any way, and they've just pushed that mental discomfort out of mind. So in that case, these questions are more planting the seeds of doubt that will hopefully build up over time. And perhaps as somebody who is trying to be a persuasive influence in somebody else's life, you have to bring it up again in the future. But don't be too annoying about it. However, it might not be all that likely for the person that you're talking to answer the questions honestly, see the predicament that they're in, and then try to get out of it after they've answered the questions. Instead, they will most likely put up resistance along the way. So let's look at the 3-question process in a little bit more detail. Question 1. Do you think you need to eat animals to survive? If they answer no, great, just proceed to the next question. If they answer yes, they're either ignorant, lying, or have some extremely rare medical condition. If they're lying, that doesn't sound like the type of person that you can even reason with in the first place. Constructive arguments require both participants to act in good faith, but you could go a little bit further with them just to really make sure if they're being a stubborn asshole or not. If they seem to truly believe that humans need to eat animals to survive, then just present them evidence that contradicts that. For instance, yourself. If you're asking them these questions in the first place, odds are you're probably vegan or vegetarian or whatever, in which case you seem to be doing just fine without eating animals. So it can't be true that humans need to eat animals to survive because, hey, look at me, I am alive, and that's should be pretty compelling evidence, I would hope. You seem to be surviving just fine without eating animals, proving them incorrect. But perhaps every 100,000 or something people that you ask will mean that no, they specifically cannot survive without eating animals. It's unlikely, but maybe they have fatal allergic reactions to every single species of plant on Earth, and so they can only eat meat and eggs. In such a case, maybe just don't try to convince that person to be vegan. A moral improvement doesn't need to be 100% universally applicable in order to be a moral improvement. If everyone on Earth was vegan except for the few people who literally cannot be, I'd call that a win. Besides, veganism is about reducing animal suffering and death as far as is possible. It just might not be possible to reduce it to 0. But as a person asking these questions to someone else, I don't think you really have to worry about the possibility of encountering somebody who just literally, for medical reasons, cannot be vegan. But what's less rare is the people who have like 1 or 2 allergies and use that as an excuse as why they can't be vegan, because for them, it is a bit harder to be vegan than for most people who don't have those food allergies. But anyway, not counting those rarities, the answer you should receive if the person is being logical and honest with you is no. I don't need to eat animals to survive. Question 2. Do you think it's ethical to kill something unnecessarily? Once again, most normal people will say no. And that's the basis and the beauty of this trap, is you're not imposing your moral code onto somebody else. You're using their own moral code and showing that their own morality is incompatible with itself. So no is the expected answer. Though if you haven't encountered resistance yet, you probably will now, because by this point, people definitely know where this is headed. People don't like to feel immoral, understandably, so they'll often try to get out of the trap by arguing dishonestly. You've already established with them that killing animals for consumption is not necessary for humans in the vast majority of cases, so they can't argue that now. Though many people will try to backtrack and say that, no, actually it is necessary, even though they just said it wasn't a few moments ago. And aside from that, you'll mostly get resistance of the sort that is near psychopathic. Like that killing animals purely for sport is A-okay. People will claim that it's actually just fine to kill things without the justification of necessity. Sure, we don't need to eat animals, they'll say, but killing them doesn't matter. You could try to argue with such a person, but your logic will probably fall on deaf ears. As in my experience, it usually reduces down to the person saying, I don't care. It's very hard to convince someone out of their apathy, no matter what the topic is. And disturbingly, this apathetic response comes from a large percentage of people. You can certainly try to show people why they shouldn't be apathetic, and this is often where emotional imagery comes in, such as slaughterhouse footage. It's easy not to care when you're just thinking about it, a bit harder not to care when you see it and it's vivid and it's right in front of you. Ideally, people could be influenced purely by logic, but empathy is often the starting point. People are initially prompted to pay attention to something because they feel emotional about it. Then, if you're a rational person, you use logic to check that you're justified in feeling the way that you do. Too much emotional reasoning is a bad thing, but so is not enough emotional reasoning. Because without it, then you can't be brought to care about anything at all. And in many cases, apathy is the attitude of somebody who has been exposed to the problem so little that they can get away with not caring about it or just ignoring it. As Paul McCartney said, if slaughterhouses had glass walls, everyone would be vegetarian. That's not literally true because the people who work at slaughterhouses see what's going on the inside and they aren't vegetarian, but I think the overall message is largely true. If slaughterhouses had glass walls, meaning if everyone frequently saw what was going on inside, then a lot more people would be vegetarian, or ideally vegan. But even still, many people will remain unmoved. Sometimes it's not apathy, and it's just people trying not to lose the argument. You hate to have to admit to someone that you're wrong, and you hate to realize that you're wrong mid-argument. So some people will play the I don't care card in the moment as a defense of their psyche, but will gradually let down their facade of apathy over weeks, months, or even years. But still, this isn't all people. In the cases where this doesn't happen, it probably comes down to either hypocrisy or just a fundamental lack of empathy. If you're lucky and they aren't apathetic at heart, then they might draw the line on which animals are okay to kill and which animals aren't. If you're debating someone about this, try gently showing them the arbitrariness of this line. They might make up various reasons for that line, like the intelligence of the animal. Here, it's often useful to point out that the animals that we eat are just as intelligent, if not sometimes more intelligent, than the animals that we don't eat, and so on with any other metric. And it can also be useful to point out that the animals that we eat can be more intelligent than many full-grown humans. But basically, whatever line they choose to draw, you can show that they're being inconsistent with it. Another place that your interlocutor will often go is, I don't have to eat animals to survive, but they just taste so good. This is where you point out just exactly how psychopathic that is. Except, of course, in a way that doesn't insult them. The Socratic method is typically best, just asking people questions so that they can see for themselves the inconsistencies of their own answers. You could say something like, so you value your own momentary pleasure over the entire life of an animal. They might then realize how fucked up that is, but unfortunately, more likely they'll attempt to rationalize it or just say, yes, which is right back to the apathy problem. Question 3. Do you eat animals? Obviously, if the person being asked isn't vegan or vegetarian, which obviously they aren't, because why would I be asking them that question if they are, they'll say yes. And if they said no to the first 2 questions and yes to the last question, then it reveals an inconsistency in their own ethics, which they should be able to see. If they can't see it, just gently point it out to them. And you might notice that these 3 questions don't specifically relate to veganism, but rather to vegetarianism. They're about killing and eating animals, which is something that vegetarians don't do, or at least they don't feel responsible for. I mean, they don't really kill or eat animals directly, and even more indirectly than somebody who actually eats animals, but still, if you're a vegetarian, your money is going towards killing animals, purposefully killing animals. Like, if you eat eggs, then you're basically paying for half of the chickens that get born in the egg industry to get thrown into a macerator or get electrocuted to death. So you might not be eating the dead animal, but your actions still result in avoidable animal death. But I call this the veganism trap because the logical conclusion of vegetarianism is veganism, for reasons I just described. And because while I see vegetarianism as a huge improvement over carnism, the thing I truly want to promote is the veganism. To make these questions more strictly related to veganism, you could either slightly modify the questions or ask a secondary set of questions afterward, such as, do you think it's ethical to torture and enslave something unnecessarily? Eating an animal's eggs or drinking its milk is not necessary for your survival. And those things are done through enslavement, exploitation, etc. in 99% of cases. The people with backyard chickens might be innocent of these things depending on the backyard farm, but most people, by a wide margin, are not buying their eggs from backyard farms, nor could they if they wanted to. So I went down some long tangents between each of those questions to explain a little bit of where the conversation might go. But I think these 3 questions are best used directly in sequence with one another, rather than moving to the second question after the first question has largely been forgotten about because you spent so much time talking about other stuff. Of course, as I said before, the only way these questions really flow nicely into each other is if you get the expected answers, which would be no, I don't need to eat animals to survive, and no, I don't think it's ethical to kill things unnecessarily, and yes, I do eat animals. That way, the whole sequence will be more salient in the person's mind, and they will be more easily able to see the contradictory nature of their answers. When you're expecting debate and heavy resistance, which is nearly all the time, you could say something like, answer these 3 questions with honest, one-sentence answers, and then, if necessary, we can discuss them in more detail afterward. And that might give you a higher chance of running through the sequence smoothly. And that's it. Goodbye.